Hello everyone. In today's video, we will try to explore Docker networking and understand how two containers talk to each other with bridge network. So, when we create a container, it is isolated from other containers and all the applications. This is happening because Docker networking is already enabled in the Docker containers and it does not expose any port. That is why it is very important that we understand Docker networking very well. Otherwise, it will become very difficult to make the containers talk to each other. So Docker containers allows container to connect to and communicate with each other and to the non-Docker application as well. Docker already creates few network for us. If we check with the command docker ls.docker network ls, then we can see that there are few networks already created. The bridge network, the host network, and none networks. There are many other networks as well Docker provides, but in today's video we will focus mainly on a bridge networks, the default bridge network, and we can create our own custom bridge network. To understand concept clearly, I have created two modules, Iron Fist and Red Hood. Both are very similar. In the Iron Hood, there is a controller which is calling one API, calling buddy, and that using the REST template, it's calling the another API from the another module, Red Hood module, that is exposing the port 8082. Similarly, there is a calling buddy API endpoint in a Red Hood as well, and it is calling the Iron Fist API. Let's run this application locally and see how it works. So the both containers has been started, and let us go to the Postman and see how we can get up how both the containers are calling to each other and getting the informations. So Iron Fist is calling the APIs from the Red Hood and getting this information. Similarly, the Red Hood API is calling Iron Fist and getting this string. With this simple setup, we will be able to explore how two containers talk to each other. As I was saying earlier, Docker container does not expose any port by default. To make the container talk to any other container, Docker container has to publish the port. Then only other container can talk to the containers. When we publish the port, this will create the firewall role in the host and mapping a container port to the Docker host so that Docker container can talk to other applications or the outer world. So some of the examples are you can write -v or dash public. Both are equivalent. So here it is exposing the internal 80 port to the outer world with the 8080 port. So map port 8080 on the Docker host to TCP port in the container. So the right side is the internal port and the left side is a exposed port. Similarly, here it is exposing the port 8080 at IP address 192.168.1 and 1. So we also can write like these as well. Let us try to understand this with the example. Here, let me go back into the terminal. Here, uh, if you go into the Iron Fist, there is a Docker file. With this Docker file, you can generate image for the Docker. So using Docker build -t cup of Java tech Iron Fist and version 1. Inside this one I can write like this and I should be able to generate the image. I already have generated the image, so I will not generate the image again. Once the image is generated, you can go to the readme file and you can find the detail about that, how to generate the image. So here you can generate the image like this. Okay, so once the image got generated, we can run this application locally. So the way you can run with a docker run command is docker run -d. I want to run the application in detach mode, so I will write like -d, then I will add rm flag so that if I stop the container, automatically it will be removed from the container list. Then I will expose, let's say I don't want to expose the port first. I will give the name Iron Fist and what is my cup of Java tech Iron Fist and version 1. This is my image name. So I will start the application and it has created one application. So if you look at here, it has generated a container. So I can go into the logs Iron Fist and I'll be able to see that the application has been started. The internal port that is exposed is 8081, but there is no port being exposed outside. Okay, so if I go back into the Postman and check, the applications will not be able to make the call because there is no port being exposed. Also, uh, when I do docker ps, I can also see here there is no port details. Also, one thing to notice, when we create a container, it goes into a default bridge. So earlier we discussed about Docker default network, right? So here I did not specify any network detail when I was running the applications. So that is why it will go into the default bridge network. Similarly, when I run the applications with attaching the port, let's say something like this, that means it will be publishing my application at the port. So let us try to do the comparison between both the applications when we start by inspecting the containers. So the way you can inspect that using inspect command. So docker inspect and you can give the container ID or you can give the name. So I will give you the name Iron Fist. I will not show you the whole details because it exposes so much of the detail about my network. So I will not do it, but I will show you the exact uh, snapshot of both the containers with exposed port and without the exposed port. So let us see that if I go here in my my presentations here with the help of the Docker inspect Iron Fist or container ID. You should be able to see the details about the port, what it is exposing. So some of the things like it is by default, as I was saying, it is attaching the applications to the bridge network. When we expose the port, it does the port binding. And in case, in our case, we were exposing at 8081, so it will be exposing at the port 8081. Also, inside the configuration, also the port that is exposed, it provides you detail about that. And also, further down the line, also it provides you the detail about the port that it is exposing. In case when we are not exposing the port with this command, we don't see any detail about the exposed port. So what I will do is I will stop the container and then let me just start the container ps. Okay, there is no container ready. So what I'll do is I'll start the container by exposing the port. Let me go back and I will expose. I'll run the command one more time with exposing the port. So earlier we had used this container port like 8081 we are exposing, and I was saying that by default it was attaching with the bridge network, right? Let us go back to the Postman and see whether it is able to get us the details about that. Let me go back to the Postman. Now I can run and I can see that iron force the the get API of the simple getting the details about the applications is running. I may not be able to run the calling buddies because I have not started the Red Hood currently, but I am able to run the application, right? Because the port got exposed. So this is all about the how we can start the container in the bridge network and how we can make the application run and expose the port. In the next video, we will continue the discussion and we will discuss further on how to create our own network, how the two containers can be attached with the same network, and how we can make a container talk to each other. So thank you very much for watching this video.